To understand what the occult has to do with the fashion industry, first we need to know what the occult is. The word occult does not mean evil, it simply means hidden, secret, obscured, concealed. This is referring to secret knowledge, hidden knowledge, and is often called esoteric. When knowledge or symbols are esoteric, it means it is intended for or likely to be understood by only a small number of people with a specialized knowledge or interest. It is often the case that symbols that have esoteric meanings also have exoteric meanings. Exoteric is the opposite of esoteric. It is when it is intended for or likely to be understood by the general public. There are many symbols that are esoteric. Some of these symbols are probably very familiar to you, but at the same time might not communicate much of a message at all. Don't be alarmed if you don't know what their esoteric meaning is. You are not supposed to. But once you take the time to study them, you no longer take these symbols at face value, but will be able to decode a message that is deliberately being conveyed. This goes hand in hand with the occultic motto, which is hiding in plain sight. But what has all this to do with fashion? We will get there, but first we need some more background information. I first want to address the undertones suggested so far, such as what is the purpose of the occult, and who are the they who follow it, who propagate it. This is a huge subject and a whole other presentation in itself, but briefly allow me to explain. The occult is an ancient religion, as old as time itself. It can be difficult to define because there are so many layers to it, and it covers a whole spectrum of practices. The heart of the belief is the more secret knowledge one person can attain, the more godlike you can become, so that eventually, with enough secret knowledge, you can become God. This is also called Gnosticism, literally the belief that you can attain salvation through knowledge. The polar opposite to this belief is what the Bible teaches, which is that you attain salvation through Jesus. When studying the occult, you will often come across this dichotomy with the teachings of Christianity. If we take a quick look at Genesis 3, you have Adam and Eve living in paradise in the Garden of Eden. The serpent, who is really the devil, tempts Eve to eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. In verse 3, Eve explains to the serpent that God has told her she must not eat from it, and she must not touch it, or else she will die. In verse 4, the serpent replies to Eve, saying, "Surely you will not die, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be open, and you will become just like God, knowing good and evil." Long story short, Eve eats the fruit, which is often portrayed as an apple, even though the scripture is not specific. She then gives it to Adam to eat. They immediately experience a spiritual death, and it is the first time they both realize they are naked. The Genesis 3 account is known in theology as the fall of man, or original sin. On the other hand, the lie of the serpent is the original lie from Satan. Satan lied to Eve when he told her by gaining knowledge she will become a god herself. He was appealing to her pride, offering her a god status if she did what he really wanted her to, which was simply to rebel against God like he did. It is the same lie being told today in the occult, that acquiring more knowledge will elevate you to godliness. Knowledge is power is a term famously attributed to Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon was a 33-degree Freemason and was heavily steeped into the occult. It is fair to say that the phrase, "knowledge is power," rings true, and is commonly heard these days. At face value, it has a resemblance to the scripture in the Bible found in Hosea, quote, "My people perish for lack of knowledge," end quote. And that's Hosea chapter 4, verse 6. But these are two rather different sayings that, although may appear to communicate the same thing, have in fact very different implications. For example, the purpose behind the phrase "knowledge is power" is to use knowledge to control and manipulate others, directly implying that knowledge is a powerful tool or weapon. For instance, say, my close friend and I were the only ones who knew about the solar system and understood the planetary alignments of how the moon revolves around the Earth and the Earth around the sun. And say we were the only ones who knew there was going to be an eclipse next Tuesday at midday. We could use that knowledge to manipulate others. I could say something like, "Give me all your money or else I will darken the sun on Tuesday at midday." The chances are you may not give me your money there and then, But because I know you do not hold the same knowledge as me, and therefore cannot possibly understand the nature of eclipses, when Tuesday comes around and at midday I supposedly darken the sun as I predicted I would, you would probably not be able to hand over your money quick enough. As opposed to the scripture in Hosea, my people perish for lack of knowledge, there are no manipulative undertones here. God is telling us that by having knowledge we won't suffer or perish at the hand of those who try to manipulate or lie or control us. It is meant as an encouragement for us to gain knowledge so that we do not suffer, and no way suggests that we are to lord our knowledge over others to manipulate them. Knowledge is power implies a weapon of offense, whereas my people perish for lack of knowledge implies a weapon of defense. Big difference.